Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a video number 8 in our freelance series, and we're going to be talking about the sales process, right? Now, before we get started, I want to mention that I've noticed that this series is not getting a lot of views, but the people that are watching them so far, there's a 100% like ratio. Now, I know this stuff is tough and it's something you don't want to deal with as a 3D artist, but if you want to be successful in the industry, I think it's pretty important, right? Also, don't forget to hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any of these videos or on any live streams that I do, right? Okay, so to the video, the sales process. Now, there are basically a bunch of steps we need to cover here, and it might take a while, right? Now, first, what you deal with is what they call lead generation. So in other words, you get a lead towards a potential client. How you get that? Many ways, right? Somebody knows somebody send you an email, you heard of a post online, whatever reason that may be, right? Now, this lead is something you need to follow up on as a 3D artist because you potentially want to get that job, right? Or that project. Now, if you look at lead generation, you can do that in-house, which means that you go out and try to find these leads yourself, or you can actually hire companies to do lead generation for you. Most freelance 3D artists will do it themselves, but just so you know that the option is out there. Okay, so if we look at these leads, there are basically a couple of categories here. They're unqualified leads, basically you're calling phone numbers in the phone book, right, or online. And they're qualified leads. You actually know that there's a project or you know somebody in the company that is looking for a 3D artist, right? Now, the way you kind of follow up on these is if you've got multiple leads going on, you kind of qualify them as unqualified towards qualified, depending on what the success ratio might be, okay? Now, typically, if a lead ends up in an initial meeting, this can be a phone call, but also a face-to-face meeting. This is the area where you talk about, what the project is. So the potential client will explain, well, we're looking for a 3D artist. We want the artist to do this, and so, and it's going to be this and this time frame. This is our budget, blah, 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 right? Now, not every process goes the same way. Sometimes that meeting will actually have a yes or a no at the end of it. Depending on the size of the client, depending on the complexity of the project, sometimes you might have 2 or even more meetings on that, right? But anyway, at some point there is a situation where you are going to make an offer or not, right? So that is basically the quotation stage. You are sending a quote. You're telling them, I'm willing to do this, this is my price, this is the time I need to do it, and so forth, okay? Now, that quote may be accepted or not. If the client accepts the quote straight up, then you will end up with an order or a purchase order, which technically is a contract, all right? Now, sometimes they will get back on that quote and say, well, it's okay, but it's a bit too expensive, or you didn't get this right, or we need to add some more details. But anyway, at some point, it will either end up in an offer, right, that's accepted or not. Now, let's say in this case, it's accepted, right? And I'll go into detail on all of these in a minute. So let's say the client accepts it. So you start doing the work, then at some point you deliver the work, and then you send an invoice and you get paid. That is kind of step by step the full cycle. Now, like I mentioned, there are many different ways to approach this. Sometimes if you have an existing client that you worked with for years, it's a simple phone call. They'll give you a call and say, hey, Jim, I need another model of a kitchen. I'll send you an email this afternoon with the concept and, do your usual thing. That's one way to go. The other might be you having an interview with a huge client, 10,000 employees and so forth. You get introduced to maybe an HR department who introduces you to the person in charge, and that will take a longer time. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because depending on the size of the client, you need to take into account that you might be spending a lot more time to actually get that order, right? And time is money, right? So if you're going to have to go over there 3-4 times, having 2-hour meetings before you can finally start working on something, you spend pretty much a full day, right? Keep that in mind. Alrighty, so we are going to do a separate video on negotiating, right? So we're not going to go into that, but it's important that you know what element goes where. Okay, so first, lead generation. Like I said, you need to qualify the leads. So if you have a lead on something, you need to learn and build experience on what you think will become an actual order and what is something that will not. To give you an idea, I see on Facebook all the time posts saying, hey, I need a 10-minute animation and my budget is $50. Of course, that's complete nonsense, right? So the first thing that I do is I research the potential client. Is this a legitimate business? What do they do? Where are they located? Are there any bad reviews about them online? Not that they're necessarily true, but just to give you an idea. What type of work did they do? Is that something within the realm of what you like to do? And so forth, right? Now, when it comes to the meeting itself, to decide whether or not you're going to actually follow up on it and make an offer, you need to consider who you're talking to. I mean, is this a 3D trained person? Is this an artist? Is this a technical person? Or is this basically an end user? Let's say you were asked to model a car. Maybe you are talking to the owner of the car dealership, right? They probably don't know a lot about 3D. They just want to talk about what they need, right? They need a 2-minute commercial or they need whatever. Keep that in mind, and that helps you to prepare for your meeting. Don't talk too much about technical details if you know that's something they don't know anything about. Try and look for what's valuable to them, right? When it's done, the quality, what will be the difference when they have this for them to improve their business, okay? But again, that's all about the negotiation thing, and we're going to do that next video, all right? Okay, so then you decide, okay, I'm going to make an offer, right? What is that? An offer is a quotation, is something that they can accept or not. So what do you want to put in that offer? First of all, the date of the offer, because when did you make it, right? So you're going to put in the date of the offer, and you're going to put in a date for how long this offer is good. If you make them an offer and 4 years from now they call you and say, yeah, sure, go ahead, you got a whole different ballgame, right? Prices have changed, whatever. So I would usually put in something like, this is the date of today. The validity of this offer is, to be accepted within a week, for example, right? And if not, then possibly the prices will change and whatever. A good description of the work, and I mean a good description, a very good description, okay? So describe exactly what you're offering. And the reason for that is there's a thing that goes on all the time. It's called scope creeping. Scope is basically the definition of the project, the boundaries. And what you see all the time is that the client will say, well, that's not exactly what I meant. Can you change that? Or can you add something? Can you take something out? And you will go on and on and on. And the scope is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And you just offer them one price, right? So you're losing time, you're losing money. So make a very clear description of what you consider the project. Also, very important, write down what you consider the definition of the project being done. If I deliver you this in that format, so on and so forth and so on and so forth, then it is considered complete by both parties. This will include 1 or 2 changes, depending on what you want to do, and after that is done. Any additional changes required by the client will cost more time and therefore more money. And you can put that in the offer. Any additional change after that will cost you so much per so much time. So you're covered on that, right? Then, of course, you can talk about currency. Obviously, you don't want to be paid in euros if you're living in the US. You're going to talk about how you want to be paid, per PayPal, per bank, per, whatever. You're going to talk about when you want to receive the funds. Now, I typically, especially with larger projects, will charge 50% upfront because you have to start doing the work and so forth and so on. It's also asking for a commitment from the client that they're serious, right? They pay you 50% of the agreed amount if they accept your offer. You start working on it. About halfway, the halfway point, you show them kind of work in progress, and you can use one of those watermarks on it if you want. Work in progress, and then you tell them when you're at the halfway mark, the next 25%. So then you are 75% in. Then after you deliver everything, and it's all said and done, you send an invoice for the final 25%. And again, this depends on the total amount. If the whole project is $100, you don't. If the whole project is $10,000, I would, right? Because you're going to be working a long time on that. You don't want to lose out on the money. All right, so that's the whole acceptance thing. Now, so let me see. So you put a date on it, you put the validity on it, you'll put in there what the definition is, you'll put in there what is considered acceptance, you will describe any changes and what that means and how long that takes and whether you charge for that, right? You might want to put something in there, what to do in case of a dispute, right? Let's say you disagree on what is considered delivered, you can put something in there as well. And of course, you're going to mention when you're going to start working on it and when it should be complete without any additional changes, right? So you put all of that in there. If the client comes back to you with a verbal or written confirmation, and preferably written confirmation, you now have a contract, right? A contract is a verbal or written agreement between two or more legal entities. Look at the last video if you don't know what that is, right? And it's a binding contract. So yeah, keep that in mind, right? So let me look at my cheat sheet here. So that's the contract phase. You get a confirmation. So the contract is now in effect. You start working. Then you have the execution portion of the work because you need to deliver before they pay. So this whole trajectory of working on this is something that you need to be careful with. And again, because of scope creeping, right? Spend more time in the beginning to make a clear and good definition so you don't have problems afterwards, right? So you execute whatever you agreed on, right? And then finally, you have you have to send your invoice because you want to get your money, right? Now, the invoice that you send has to be based on the original offer. So, of course, you're going to send the amount you agreed on unless there have been additional changes, right? You also need to agree up front in your offer what the payment term will be. You want to get your money within 14 days or within 30 days. Payment terms tend to be different per culture. For some reason, in the Middle East, payment terms 90 days, 120 days are normal, right? Here in Western Europe, 30 days typically. Some other cultures or even some other industries will go with longer or shorter depending on what industry you work in, right? But for the most part, I would say 30 days. Now, once that's all said and done, you can say your contract is complete and you delivered and they paid. But it doesn't end there because this is a very valuable connection you set up. And you don't want to go out and find completely new clients every time. So what you try to do is try to get some lock-in from that client for future business. How do you do that? Well, let's say a couple of weeks after you got your money, you give them a call. Hey, are you still satisfied with everything? Anything new come up? Anything new you want me to work on? Can I help you with anything? Are there any other people in your company working with 3D stuff? And so forth and so on, right? So a lot of stuff to consider, but in a nutshell, that is the sales process. It has certain legal elements to it, of course. What is considered a contract, what is considered acceptance, and so forth. But it very much also has an element of building a network and building a relationship. You might think that you don't need these skills. Trust me, if you want to work as a freelance artist, you have to have these skills, right? And I know it's tough stuff and it's not cool like 3D modeling, but believe me when I say this is valuable information, okay? Well, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video. Don't forget to hit that notification thing, okay? See you. Bye.